G'day and welcome to Snap Happy, the photography show. I'm Jason Edwards.
And I'm Maddie Sloane. Jace, you did something a little bit different this week, a little bit scary perhaps?
Well, I had the opportunity to swim with the sharks at Melbourne Sealife Aquarium. What about you, Mads?
I was in Queensland visiting Marcus Bell at Studio Impressions. He took us to the process of creating this moody image of a local musician.
All this and more on today's episode of Snap Happy, the photography show.
We are here at Studio Impressions, a studio recognised internationally for its quality, creativity and professionalism in its work. We're about to head inside and meet Marcus Bell, who is an AIPP Grandmaster of Photography. Marcus, tell us about the studio.
This is Studio Impressions. It's something that we've had for 20 years now, and it came out of a love of photography, and it was simple, humble beginnings, and going out with other photographers and learning the craft. And then I got the bug, and then the rest is history.
So obviously you specialise in wedding photography. What made you pick that genre?
I think it's about the moments. Early on I used to photograph streetscapes and landscapes, and I was really fortunate to travel to some of the beautiful places in the world, and I always were trying to look for stories. And funny enough, I went to a friend's wedding, and then I noticed everything that I was looking for, around the world to photograph was actually at a wedding. There was all these amazing stories and relationships, and that's what really compelled me.
Now, what are you working on at the moment? What shoot did you do today?
Yeah, we were doing a new PR shot for Tyler. Tyler's a drummer, and we've done a couple of shoots in the past for Tyler and a few of his bands.
Awesome.
And so today was just a little bit different about, getting some really individual shots. And it was a really creative session. And so what's going to be really exciting is capturing something that's really different and playing a little bit. So it's, I love, working with lights and, trying different things and making it really moody and come up with something completely new that I haven't done before as well.
So before you were talking about tethering, tell us about that.
Yeah, so tethering is really great because then I can actually sort of show the client or get a feel exactly what I'm doing. Sometimes, like the LCD screen on the back of the camera is just not big enough, and so it means that I can go straight from the camera straight to the companion.
So picking the shots, do you select your favourites and then subject selects theirs, or is it kind of a combined process?
Yeah, it's definitely a combined process. I want to just take out like all the blinks and everything that didn't quite work creatively, but it was an important step to get there. And then I can actually then go in front of Tyler and show him through the images and say, what are you feeling about this one, and get a feel for him. And I can sort of talk about a bit of post-production. And in fact, because we're viewing these images in Lightroom, we can actually make a few changes on the fly.
Quick and easy to show him the before and after,
Yeah, especially because we want to show that detail, in his eyes, and I communicate that to him. It gives him that confidence that where he may have glossed over one shot, because the eye sockets might have been just that little bit dark, then he can be reassured, no, he really loves that look. He knows that that's just part of the process, and we can go through it from there.
So you've chosen the photo of Tyler. How important is post-production?
Yeah, it's really important. I think, as a photographer, part of the creative process is what you have in your mind and how you can actually use the post-production to finish that image off. As I was saying earlier about dodging and burning, that's what I just really want to be able to lighten and darken certain areas to make sure that, people are looking at the center of interest. So which is going to be Tyler and that feeling that we get from that. I was purposely using two different sort of light sources, one which had a very, sort of cool temperature, and one was a little bit warmer. And this is where, using the Cintiq is fabulous, because not only is it touch, we can zoom in on that image with our hands. We can grab our brush, and then I'm just going to lightly brush in that blue tone color, and I can just adjust that. So you can see how it's sort of coming through now.
Yeah.
And then with my express key, there's a little dial that I can actually go in and then bring the brush down as well. And then I've got a key where it just says full screen, and now we're at full screen on that image.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, Marcus, it's great to see the whole process from start to finish. But guys, stay tuned, because coming up, Marcus will be giving us some more post-production tips.
When I'm on the road, I work in some pretty horrendous conditions. Wet, windy, dirty, muddy. My camera gear really cops a beating. So when I get home, I need to get the equipment serviced. So I've come to the camera clinic to do just that. Wayne, we're here at the camera clinic. Tell us what you do.
Well, primarily we fix cameras. That is our bread and butter, that's what we do. Not to say that cameras fail a lot, but there are aspects of cameras that need service.
So how often should you get a camera serviced?
It's based on that sort of magic number that we get, that's the shutter count. With that in mind, if it's used professionally, you're certainly going to be looking at visiting a service centre once a year. Amateur, 2 to 3 years. It's nothing that you really need to freak out or worry about, but it's something that it's good to keep in mind because there are a lot of wearing parts on it. And when we service a camera, we strip that down, we keep in mind its usage and what it's had done to it, and then we appropriately replace or service those parts. So it'll be lubrication, replacement wearing parts, and adjustments. And things can wander and shift. At the moment, we're looking at cameras that are 50 megapixels plus. They're resolving higher than what lenses can. So the optical errors in your lenses are showing up now in cameras. So a large part of our servicing of a camera is optical adjustments and focus shifts.
What tips can you offer people to keep their sensors clean?
Okay, reducing dust in the sensor. Simply, if you're going to change a lens or when you need to change a lens, do it face down, so the camera's face down, so there's less likely of dust to drop in. Keep the lens and camera in a clean camera bag because it's the dust that accumulates on the outside that gets sucked into the lens when you zoom. So keeping that clean. Body caps, don't put them in your pocket. It just picks up a lot of fluff and dust. And ideally, if you're in a situation where you know it's going to be dusty and it's atmospheric dust, try and keep your camera covered as much as you possibly can.
Fantastic. So I get my sensors cleaned after every assignment. When was the last time you had your camera serviced or your sensors cleaned? I love marine wildlife and especially photographing it. There's just so much diversity. Today I'm at Sealife Melbourne Aquarium, one of Victoria's premier tourist attractions. Let's go and see why. Boasting over a dozen different attractions, Sealife is home to thousands of animals, including sharks, turtles, stingrays, sawfish, tropical fish, crocodiles, and even penguins. So Tan, we're about to enter the penguin exhibit. What should I expect?
You can expect a temperature of -2 degrees. Our light cycle in the exhibit is replicated from Port Stanley in the Falkland Islands, and we can find king and gentoo penguins.
Fantastic, let's do it. Penguins have so much character. They are hilarious. And they sing. Penguins are quite short, as you can see. So try and get down to their level. It gives you a completely different perspective, but also shows you how they see the world. They've got so much character, so spend a little time just watching what they're doing, their behaviours, how they interact with each other, and then try and tell that story through your imagery. Now, one of the problems with photographing penguins is that they're predominantly black or white. And when you see them in the wild, you're photographing them on something black or white. So exposure can be a real issue. I tend to underexpose my shots just a little bit so that I don't blow out the highlights, these wonderful white feathers. The extreme cold in Antarctica can be a little bit hard on equipment, especially batteries. Don't forget to take extra batteries and always have them fully charged. When you're not using them, keep them inside your clothing, close to your body so that they stay warm. Don't keep them in an outer pocket. A lot of people worry about their camera equipment getting wet when they visit Antarctica. It's not going to happen. It's the driest continent on the planet. My gear gets buried in snow sometimes when I'm working down there and it's completely fine. But when you go back inside, say to a ship, you will get condensation on the lens and maybe even in the camera itself. I use a soft towel to dry off my gear and then I let it warm up slowly in my cabin. If there's still condensation on the equipment, I use a hairdryer on low and gently so that I don't overheat the camera.
I'm Marcus Bauer and I love photography and I'm passionate about weddings. And this is what's in my wedding kit. I always shoot with 2 camera bodies. So 2 of my favorite lenses are the zoom lenses because I want to actually make sure I capture that moment instantly. I always shoot with the D750s. I love them because they're so quiet, the quality is amazing, and also the low light availability. I do have extra lenses. I mean, I really do love, one of my favorite lenses is the 58mm 1.4 lens, but I also take along the 85mm 1.8. So one of the other things is I have a little pouch. So in here is all the memory cards. But I have a torch and also like a ring that was actually a Bombardier from one of the weddings. Anyway, what's cool is that, by just using it, you can just create sort of like different lights and, doing detail shots as well. Another little cool thing is an extension tube, and that enables any lens to become a macro lens. The other thing that I have in here is like a little MacGyver kit. It's like a little thing that's, for me and the bride. And so in here, this little exit, actually, with a tiny little bit of water, actually just takes out red wine, takes out lipstick, so it's remarkable. Tissues, obviously there's always someone crying on a wedding day, so it's always important. Just like a tiny little makeup case, a sewing kit. The other little thing is like for the guys is like definitely a bottle opener. Generally the guys is drinking some nice beers. Even like an iPhone cable, someone's needs charging, so be able to do that. And always have like a little USB power pack as well with me. Even just little things like Band-Aids. So all of these things fit into this amazing retrospective think tank 30 bag. I'm Marcus Bell, and this is what's in my kit.
There's a couple of different ways to shoot underwater photographs. I use a large housing like this. There's many designs, but you can also use your mobile phone or a pocket camera. The key to success is to keep the water away from the camera. All of the gearing that I use that operates all of the buttons is here inside the housing. And you can see that there are these O-rings, rubber rings, and that's what provides part of the seal. It's really advisable to make sure that all of the buttons are working and that your camera's turned on before you seal up a housing and take it underwater. It's a little bit painful having to come back to the surface and fix something. With a big housing like this, you use different dome ports for different lenses. So this is for wide angle. We're going to try and take some photographs of sharks, but if you're shooting macro or different other lenses, you might have a different port. As you can imagine, with glass this thin and this large, you need to be a little bit careful with them. And you shouldn't over tighten, especially underwater housing threads, because they can become very difficult to get off. Different colours have different wavelengths, and so the deeper you go underwater, the less colour you're going to have. Underwater photographers often use strobes, underwater flashlights, to replace that missing daylight. So the last thing that we attach to the underwater housing are the strobe arms, the flash arms, and then we attach the flashes to the end of the arms. They're buoyancy arms, so they don't keep the housing from sinking, but they make it sink slower. Whenever you're doing underwater work, it's always good to use a wrist strap. I've lost a camera without using a wrist strap. My record was less than 1 minute. Brand new camera in the water, camera at the bottom. It's not good for the environment, not good for my bank. There's a fair amount of weight in this sort of setup, and it's not for everyone, but remember, when you're in the water helps support that weight, so it doesn't feel as heavy as you'd imagine. Again, always remember, when you're working in the water, make sure all your seals are nice and dry. When you seal the camera inside the housing or inside the bag, and make sure that you've got a wrist strap on. Sounds obvious, but it is easy to lose a camera. Time to get suited up. Looking forward to seeing these big fish. We're at Wentworth Falls in the Blue Mountains, and I've teamed up with Maddie to road test some Lumix cameras from Panasonic.
And I'm really keen to be here with you, Jace, because maybe I can teach you a thing or two.
Looking forward to that.
Today I'm using the TZ110. It's a compact travel camera with a huge 1-inch sensor. It also has an incredible 10 times optical zoom, giving it a bigger range than any other compact camera in its class.
I'm using the GX-85. It has an interchangeable lens system and boasts 5-axis camera stabilisation. It has the functionality of a DSLR, but it's the size of a compact. So Mads, we've just hiked down this sheer cliff.
We did, we made it, we made it, Jake.
And in recent days, there's been massive amounts of rain over the Blue Mountains. The falls are cascading this wonderful curtain of water over the cliff. Now, when we're photographing waterfalls, one of the things that we want to keep in mind is that if we want to freeze the action, we need to use at least 1/250th of a second. If we want to have a blurred effect, we need to use at least 1/30th of a second or less.
So I've got my little TZ110 over here. Shall we set her up?
Yeah, let's make it happen. So Mads, we've set up our camera for the scene we want to capture. Now I've set the camera to f8, which is our smallest aperture, gives us the most amount of detail. Now what I'm going to alter just by simply pushing this button is the ISO setting. And that just adjusts the sensitivity of the sensor.
Okay.
And I've set it to 125, so quite slow. Let's push the shutter and see what we get. I'm going to push it a little further and I'm going to hold this neutral density filter, which is a dark piece of glass, over the front of the lens and see what happens.
Okay. Nice. No, it looks awesome. I like the silky look to it, hey?
So that changed our exposure to 1/2 a second, which meant more water flowed through the waterfall. I'm working with the GX-85. One of the amazing things about this camera is the 5-axis image stabilisation in the body. But more importantly, it works in conjunction with the image stabilisation in the lens. This enables me to capture low light photographs handheld. You know, I have agonised over long exposure shots for decades. Setting up tripods is painful. The quality of this frame exceeds my expectations. You can get frames with this image stabilisation handheld that were never possible, never possible.
So Jace, awesome little waterfall tip. Now, I've got a tip for you.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of post focus?
No.
Well, this little Lumix can do just that. So if I want to take the waterfall shot now, you're in it close up.
Yeah.
But then after I decide, I don't really want Jace to be in focus anymore, I'd rather have the waterfall.
It's been a long day. That function would also be perfect for macro photography where depth of field is so crucial. It's hard to get your focus right, so later on you could choose which part of the image you actually wanted.
Well Jace, it was awesome working with you today. Let's do it again sometime soon.
I'm walking through one of the underwater glass viewing tunnels. If you've never done it before, it's a unique experience. There's hundreds of species of fish and 11 species of shark. Let's go and take a closer look. So Brad, I'm here at Sealife. I'm about to get into this wonderful aquarium of yours. What can I expect to see?
The tank's actually 2.3 million litres. We've got 7 metres deep in our deepest section, and we've got over 2,000 animals in there.
And the experience is safe, isn't it?
Yeah, look, we run these dives all the time. So pretty much every day of the week we have divers going in, and it's, you know, it's a great experience.
Do the divers come out?
Yeah, they come out.
Photographing wildlife underwater is a bit of an adventure, sometimes a misadventure. You get some great shots and you get some terrible shots, but it's all fun. Experiment with your lighting, with your flashes, with your settings. That's what I did today, and I think I got a good frame or two. Sharks are incredible animals. They've been in the fossil record for tens of millions of years. They're perfectly adapted predators and vital to the health of our oceans. When people swim with sharks for the first time, they often find they lose the fear because they get caught up in the wonder of these amazing animals. Even though I felt perfectly safe swimming with the sharks today, I found that I wanted to capture them moving out of the shadows, and so I underexposed my shots, just to get that eye and that face as it came into the light. Well, that was a lot of fun. Could spend hours down there. But I have to admit, photographically, it was a lot more difficult than I thought. You know, the artificial lighting and the deep shadows of the aquarium. So I'm hoping that I got a few really moody frames, especially of the sharks, passing between the rays of light. don't have to spend a fortune to photograph underwater. I jumped on eBay and bought this cover for about $10 for my iPhone. Managed to get a couple of good frames. Just remember, always keep the wrist strap on.
So Marcus, what's a tip that you can give me for my post-production at home?
If you rotate an image 180 degrees and then you're looking at that image subconsciously, how your subconscious mind would look at that image. And then if you find that the brightest part of that image is not your center of interest, you know, generally the subject, then your mind is distracting you from where you should be looking.
Okay.
So one of the things that you can do is grab your adjustment brush and then just bring down the highlights, the shadows, and a tiny little bit of exposure. And then you just brush in that area, and then what happens is that you darken that area, and then you grab another adjustment brush and you would come over and just lighten that area where the people are, or that person, or that, you know, that beautiful tree on, you know, on the hill, maybe in Tuscany. You've then communicated where you want people to look. You want them to either look at that person or that tree on that hill. By dodging and burning, and lightening and darkening, you can actually really make a huge improvement in the images.
So just a 180 flip can give you that different perspective.
Exactly, yeah. And then just flip it back 180 degrees and
there you go.
And, go.
You've got a Marcus photo.
Yeah, that's right.
Jace, were you scared in the Shark Tank?
No, Mads, not at all. Sharks are really not aggressive animals. You should give it a go.
We shall see.
Each week we highlight one of the products from the Snapfish range. What have we got this week?
This week we're taking a look at greeting cards. Now they've got you covered in regards to templates. You've got Christmas coming up, Mother's Day, Father's Day, birthdays.
What about invitations?
They've got those too. They're so customizable. You can use your own photos and text. Awesome, hey?
Excellent. If you'd like to join our Snap Happy community, go to our website at snaphappytv.com for exclusive content, competitions and special offers from our sponsors.
We'll see you next week on Snap Happy, the photography show.
You know, you'd think after decades of shooting with cameras, I'd remember to put memory cards inside the camera that I just sealed in the underwater housing. Thankfully, I'm not in a wetsuit and I'm not underwater, but it happens to everyone. Always make sure you've got a memory card in the camera.